Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to keep this one relatively brief and short, but at the start, it's another one by Maximilian Robespierre about Tory Britain being compared to a Charles Dickens novel. And yeah, you know what? If there was ever like any one quote I could pull from a Charles Dickens novel, it would be Oliver Twist almost immediately. And I think I know the quote immediately is that tell me if you've heard this one before. What a noble illustration of the tender laws of this favoured country. They let the paupers go to sleep. And, well, we're about to see whether that holds up or what the argument for and against being compared to a Charles Dickens novel is going to turn out to be. So, here we go.
Hi guys, writer Anando Lanucci described Tory Britain as akin to a Dickens novel, where...
Leonardo Lanucci, by the way, is one of the greatest comedy writers of all time. He's responsible for a lot of works with Christopher Morris, a lot of things involving Alan Partridge, and a lot of things involving In the Thick of It. So Iannucci gets my respect almost immediately, and that's I want to hear him out, because don't tango with this guy about again with like Stephen Merchant. So you're not going to win arguments with this. Because remember when Stephen Merchant went on Newsnight back in 2011 during the height of the phone hacking scandal, and he absolutely slayed a tabloid journalist. I think it was for The Sun, because I don't think it wasn't for the News of the World, because I think even at that point News of the World were basically deceased. But I would have to like do an entire video, because I remember that I was watching the events unfold live, and it's one of the most distinct memories I had as a teenager.
While the Chancellor and Prime Minister talk about turning a corner and improving the economy, there were record numbers in destitution, and child poverty is now embedded in society.
Yep.
Government policies over the last 14 years have made the situation worse, where you have teachers who have to provide hygiene products to kids and families have to rely on food banks, while the richest have seen the greatest transfer of wealth to them.
In fact, actually, you know, the thing about food banks, they're even doing it this at my place of work, ladies and gentlemen. They are openly encouraging food banks and donating food to charities. Now, if it's going... Now, I've given money, I've given, like, again, supplies to food banks before, and even at my current job as well, I'm doing this as well. But I had a fair number of questions I want to ask about it, but I always feel like it's not going to end well if I start asking them. The first question, but I still do it anyway. I'm not doing it because I don't want to be looked at as like a coward or anything like that. I do it because I know fine well there are people who are fully in need of it more than I am. But I'm also wondering, why is money coming out? Why am I paying out of my paycheck for the business to tell me to donate to charity? Again, I would do this anyway because deep down I know why it is, but I want to know how many other businesses are doing this as well, because I'm suspecting I'm not the place I work at is not the only place this is happening, because I think this is like tantamount of a much larger issue. If, like I said again, is it because the place I work at, they're doing it because they want to help people, or are they doing this for the sake of good PR? That's the thing that is leaving me very, very much in a sort of grey area about this, is that I may be doing it for the right reasons in my mind, but are the people who are putting this together, have they done it for the right reasons as well? So that's food for thought there, ladies and gentlemen.
In history, something is deeply wrong.
I know, as well as all your writing work, you do work with CPAG, which is the Child Poverty Action Group. Listening to Jeremy Hunt, what went through your mind?
Well, this is the very week that the poverty report came out, saying that child poverty has gone up yet again, and it's almost like we're in a Dickens novel rather than the sixth biggest economy in the world, saying there's now 3.6 million children in poverty. So for every average class of 30, 9 are in poverty. And to say that we're turning a corner and that we're on the right track while ignoring that is very... It was hard for me to hear him use that phrase, carrot and stick.
But when we were talking about welfare.
Yeah, because the implication being that you need a...
Armando Iannucci, I know probably people are like getting up out of their chairs out of that, so I apologise if I got that mistake, just a slip of the tongue.
Stick to beat those on welfare, or you need a stick to beat those in poverty. And lay aside all the emotional, the psychological impact poverty has on children, the shame, the embarrassment, the fact that kids are going to school, pretending to have a packed lunch when they don't have anything in their box, not having had any breakfast and therefore going to school tired and stressed. Lay all aside that, it actually helps the economy, the fewer people we have in poverty, because it has the hugest impact on our other services, education, children's services, health, unfortunately the legal system, the more people who are in deprivation. So at the moment we're in a situation where we're actually coming up with policies that are putting more people into poverty and therefore having a greater impact and detriment to the economy because of it.
Breath of fresh air once again. You know, so many things that he brought up here. For example, the stigma connected to poverty. The idea that, well, if you're in poverty, there's something wrong with you. And it was interesting this week also when it came up about Labour planning to get rid of VAT on private education. And you had the right-wing commentator saying, please think of the poor rich parents. Please think of these people. How can you force these people to put...
I know, right? I remember once the Daily Express 2 years ago, they had an article about people unable to afford to send their kids to private schools. Well, you know what? That's what do you expect? They were just going to give them out for free? I'm very against private schools anyway, but they're just complaining that, you know, again, are they complaining about the multimillionaires who can actually afford it but are now crying wolf? Or is it against people who are being deluded into the idea that private schools are the way ahead? Because it isn't. And bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, my dad's worked 40 years in education. He could absolutely wipe the floor with people who say that private schools are the way to go. They're not, but I think I've made that point before.
Their children into state schools that are crumbling. Think about them for a moment. While at the same time saying that, well, if you're poor and you can't feed your family and you can't feed yourself, there's something wrong with you. And as Ananda said here also, this idea that you're going to use a carrot and a stick to beat, metaphorically of course, the poorest in society. See, there's something wrong with them. This is a fundamental problem. You have politicians and you have right-wing media working together to convince, and they have succeeded in doing this, to convince the poorest in society that there's something wrong with them, not wrong with society itself. So when Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt talk about, well, the economy is growing, GDP is up, you know, we're the fastest growing economy in the G7 or G20 or whatever it was. This is about convincing the public that, well, if you're not succeeding, there's something wrong with you. If you're on benefits, it's your fault. So look, the economy is doing really well, or that's what they'll say. But this, in reality, is once again a transfer of wealth from the state to the richest.
This is, and it's something I've mentioned before as well, is that why there is such a huge spike in people who have mental health issues is the idea that neglect and abandonment in society is when, again, the majority of the tyrannical, they use the carrot and stick to literally beat people over the head, thinking that if it's again, I went through this myself, ladies and gentlemen, because I was depressed and because I had nobody to turn to. I was gaslit into believing that that was entirely my fault, and for a very long time I believed that as well, until I realized that actually, because people did this to me and it lasted for so many years, it destroyed my self-confidence and my self-respect. And as a result of these things, ladies and gentlemen, I still don't feel like I've actually made any real recovery ever since. However, what I am perfectly capable of saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that despite everything that happened, it doesn't make them any more right for what they did. And I'm no doubt in saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that I'm not just the only person this has been affected. So now what?
We saw it during the pandemic. hundreds of billions of pounds transferred from the state to the richest in society. And what do they do with that money? They either send it to their offshore bank accounts, or they buy assets with that. And of course, this drives up the price of housing and all of this. Now, Hernando also talked here about children coming to school hungry, children coming to school pretending that they have packed lunches when they don't. Why is this happening? Once again, it comes back to this point of the stigma, this idea that, well, if you're poor, it's your fault. Why do we have to have this? We should be helping people. As a society, the social safety net needs to be reinforced. And the point about the economy makes perfect sense, because if you have more people in poverty, they rely more on public services that are under massive strain because they haven't been funded correctly. And people, if they're lifted out of poverty, they rely less on those services. So you will grow the economy. Poverty is the enemy of true growth in the economy. And so, unfortunately, politicians either don't see this or don't care, and their friends in the media just want to push the opposite narrative. That people on benefits, people in poverty need to be beaten out of that situation, when in reality it's the obligation of the state to provide at least health, education, and a social safety net to the public. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.
Well, because I know my camera's about to die in a couple of minutes, but let me just the feeling of the situation right now sort of goes towards other events, because even it says here on the front of the Daily Express for tomorrow, Tory MPs, we now must label China a threat to Britain. The idea is that they're now, Sir Ian Duncan Smith is beginning to suggest that we need to be like, well, now what? Then, of course, secret court for speeding and TV fines must end. Then the Kate effect. Israel isolated after UN Security Council demands Gaza ceasefire, mostly from the US. Vampires and zombies do walk among us. UK hits back at China. UK cabinet clash with China. Boeing chief Cohon to step down amid safety crisis. Drink drive death of our angels. And, well, it stands to reason, ladies and gentlemen, all of this has come about, and there's nothing about the again, it's the agenda of what, it's not just about the news that's going on, but what about the news that's actually going on right now? I mean, they talk about seeing China as a threat. Well, what exactly are we going to do about it? What exactly can we do about it? And, well, how is that going to solve issues for children and adults in poverty? It stands, again, ladies and gentlemen, is that everything is look over there instead. Again, a phrase you've heard me use a few times is look over there, as if, the problems arriving from poverty and stuff like that are just going to magically disappear because we're going to talk about something different. It doesn't work like that, ladies and gentlemen. My vision isn't blurred, but I can't tell. Can I see yours instead? Thank you, and good night.